What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more content for you guys today, and what we're going to be focusing on are the 5 tactical changes we have noticed so far under Ange Postecoglou after the first game at Brentford. And you know what? It's been a welcome change, so let's get into it.
It's probably more than 5, but it's just 5 we picked out, I can tell you that. So let's start. I guess the first one we're going to be looking at is the higher line. We're looking at the average positions compared to when we last played Brentford last season. I think it was actually the first game back after the World Cup. It also incidentally finished in a 2-2 draw.
Yeah.
Looking at the average positions of each players in that game, you can bring on the screen now. You can see not as hard. You can see the 3 defenders quite deep. Obviously, you've got the 2 centre mids. You've seen this all before. Wide fullbacks, and then the very central wingers and the striker up front. But compare this to how we set up kind of the average positions of on Sunday against Brentford in our 2-2 draw. Look how much higher up you've got the 2 defenders pretty much at the back, a lot higher up, and the whole team is basically gonna inside the Brentford half. Essentially, you got Basuma as the deepest midfielder. You got the 2 centre mids much closer to the striker, and it's just going to lead to us being a lot more dominant, I feel, when we're a lot higher up the pitch, and it's going to cause a lot more problems. So that's nice to see. So yeah, the first one, obviously the higher line.
Yeah, and in the first graphic, it was just, Conte pretty much inviting pressure onto us with the majority of our team, especially the defenders and the midfielders, really deep on the football pitch. And now where you've got those 3 defenders, it's literally just one defender a bit higher up in Mickey van de Ven with the recovery pace. And everyone else is just pushed so much higher on the pitch. It's going to give us so more options. And that's why you saw Spurs for large periods of that game really camped out in the Brentford half and keeping possession as well.
And even if you look at the if you look at the average position we showed, Romero is actually quite deep, but that's misleading because he only played 12 minutes. If you swap it for Sanchez, he's actually level with Van de Ven,
right,
if not higher. And if you count how many players are inside our own half, for the Brentford game last season, it was 5 players, and this season only 2 players in our own half on any given moment. So I think it shows the difference in intent that we're going for this season.
Yeah, it's definitely a welcome change, and the addition of Mickey van de Ven is really going to help combat maybe counter-attacks onto us. Obviously, in the first half against Brentford, we were very susceptible to the counter-attack, but we did clean that up in the second half with a few tweaks from Ange Postecoglou. So I think more moving forward, when you're looking at the high line and us being susceptible to counter-attack, I think Ange does have a big job on his hands to really counteract that and how he's going to counteract that. But I think Mickey van de Ven will be a long way of how we can, move forward playing that high line.
All right, moving on to the fullbacks, the next tactical change, obviously, which is very widely reported, how Postecoglou likes to play his fullbacks. If you look at, obviously, we played a wing-back system last season against Brentford. In last season, we had Matt Doherty and Ivan Perisic as our wing-backs. And if you bring on screen, look how wide they are last season. This is Ivan Perisic pretty much sticking to the left-hand side. Very little movement centrally, just making sure he's providing the width. Looking at Matt Doherty as well, seeing a lot more of the ball, but also very, very wide, literally hugging that touchline against Brentford last season. And then compare it to how the fullbacks moved in centrally this season. You had Emerson Royale playing the first inverted role. Look how central that is. Unbelievable. It's like a centre mid.
Yeah.
Heat map. That could easily be a central midfielder there. Look at how so red. He's picking up the ball a lot as well. Very concentrated. And even when he's in defensive positioning, you can see in his own half, also very central, not very wide. And also look at Destiny Udogie as well. A bit wider than maybe Emerson Royale's, but also very concentrated in the centre area. That's where he's picking up the ball. Did pick it up a bit a bit higher up than Emerson, but that goes to show as well how the fullbacks are going to be playing this season under Ange Postecoglou. It's going to give us greater dominance in the centre of the park. It's going to give us more options, and it'll lead up to the a later takeaway, but a later tactical change. But it's also going to free up the centre mids to be higher up the pitch, which we'll talk about a bit later. But whether we have the fullbacks, which are going to be perfect for that system, look, that remains to be the argument, but it's very interesting to see how they play.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're comparing Conte and Ange Postecoglou, they both use their wide backs, because I mean one's a wing back, one's a fullback, but they both use them in a very different way. And I believe that if you have the right players for each system, they can both be equally as effective. But I mean, it's a completely different way of playing the game. You know, Antonio Conte had them completely wide, bombing up and down the pitch, and Ange Postecoglou has them both coming really into the central and trying to dominate those midfield areas. And I think that potentially there was, in my opinion, there was a problem against Brentford how narrow we were, and maybe that's a case of why it didn't work so well in terms of how we can build up attacks. But we were definitely kind of very dominant in the midfield area, and we were very dominant and in terms of a very heavily based possession game. So I would like to see us create more chances, but I wouldn't put that down on Destiny or Emerson. I think we're going to look at the next players for that.
Yeah, I think Destiny and Emerson did their jobs pretty well in terms of what they were asked to do on the football pitch. But what's also interesting is the fullbacks under a Conte system. How many times did we see the wingbacks just very isolated? They're the ones providing the width, and all the other players are very congested in the centre. So when we got out to Perisic, Doherty, a lot of the times they were isolated. Well, yet when Emerson and Dogi are picking up the ball, they've always got options. It seems they've always got space.
But having said that, off the ball, Emerson seemed to struggle a little bit up against Rico Henry with all that space behind him, because Rico did get the better of him a number of times. And I don't think that was a personnel problem. I think that was due to maybe the tactics deployed by Ange. And maybe it was a personnel problem because maybe Emerson's not just used to those tactics just yet.
The next tactical change, we're going to be looking at the wingers and how Postecoglou likes to play his wingers a lot differently. So actually, Son and Kulusevski were our wide forwards under Antonio Conte, and they picked up the ball last season in the Brentford away game. They're very, very central, not really having actually Son here, you can see, wasn't actually that involved, but very central, picking up the ball in basically like a central attacking midfield area, essentially. And look at Dejan Kulusevski as well, a bit wider than Son. But what's quite interesting is look how the concentration of his touches is actually in the defensive area. The dark red there, you can see he's picking up the ball way too deep. He wants to be picking up the ball a lot higher up the pitch, and when he does pick up the pitch, he's picking up a bit centrally, also sometimes wider. Compare it to this season. Kulusevski very high, very wide, very little touches in his own half, very much like an orthodox winger. That's where the concentration is. Although Kulusevski clearly does like to drift in centrally like he did last season, but you can see where he's picking up the ball, and Heung-min Son as well. The concentration very high, very wide, and it's very, very different to how the wide forwards are playing under Conte. Yeah,
absolutely. I do question if that role is suited to the both of them, to be honest, not just Sonny, but Kulusevski as well. I think. But I'm not sure about Kulu. I mean, Kulu, he had a great time when he joined us under Conte, first and foremost, for those 5 months from January all the way till the end of the season. He was electric. But ever since then, he's really failed to live up to the heights of what he did produce that season. So I'm not sure if he's just been found out. It's a tactical issue. I'm not really sure. I haven't really made my mind up yet on Kulusevski. But in terms of Sonny and Kulu, in this system, they drift in a little bit, but not as much as they both probably would like. And I think Sonny needs to be drifting into the central areas. I think if you leave him out wide and ask him to cross, and same with Kulusevski, especially with only Richarlison in there and not Harry Kane, I think we might run into a few problems.
Yeah, maybe it's hoping it's just some teething problems, and maybe it's for them, it's just going to take some getting used to, because I think, especially for Kulusevski, I remember him saying in an interview he's going to enjoy picking up the ball a lot higher up the pitch than he was under Antonio Conte, where he had to drive a lot from deep positions too often. I think Kulusevski, I do think the system is going to suit him, in my opinion. I think what Ange Postecoglou is going to ask of his wingers is Kulusevski is definitely capable of, in my opinion. I do have more question marks about Heung-min Son, his capability and his fit into that system in this at his current age and his point in his career. But I do think picking up the ball in a lot higher up the pitch is going to be to their benefit, I reckon, as the season goes on.
I really thought, though, like when Kulusevski was picking up the ball from deep, it really suited him, because he's a really good ball carrier. And in my opinion, I just remember that game against Liverpool at Anfield at the back end of that season I was talking about, where he played really well. He was pretty much playing like a right back that game, and he was picking up the ball right close to our area and drifting up the pitch all the time and bursting forward, beating men and providing quality at the end of that. Right now, as we saw in the game against Brentford, he was picking up the ball in very congested areas, and he couldn't seem to get any sort of quality in anything he was doing.
I think he can. I know he didn't. I think he grew I think he grew into that Brentford game, and I really believe in what Kulusevski's qualities are. I think he's suited to this role. I think he can do it, and I think it's just give him a bit more time. I think he's going to be a really good fit for that right wing role, in my opinion.
Hope so.
That's my assessment. The next up is you looking at how the centre mids play. This is a wildly different from Conte to Postecoglou. If you look at last season, we actually started with the double pivot of Yves Bissouma and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. And if you look at Højbjerg in how he played the pivot role, he's obviously makes quite a lot of touches all around the pitch. He was actually covers a lot of ground, but the concentration of his touches, you can see more defensive areas, very central. Seems to drift off to the left, but again, he's very much picking up the ball in very deep line positions, not too many touches in the attacking third, and very much looking to patrol it here. Yves Bissouma as well, very similar, very deep. Not too much freedom to maybe move around. He's very much concentrated in the very central areas and definitely looking to screen and protect the defence rather than looking forward. And look at the difference when we look at specifically Bissouma from this season to last season. This is last season and this is this season. Look at the concentration of where he's picking up the ball. Not only is he picking up the ball more varied positions, but look how much higher he is picking up the ball as well. The vast concentration of his touches is not only in the opposition's half, but pretty much in the opposition's attacking third. And
this role for Bissouma in this Ange system is what he's suited to down to a T. I kept saying it time and time again. The Bissouma role in the Conte system, he hated it because the shackles were on him, and he needs freedom to do what he needs to do. He's got unbelievable dribbling ability, and he could patrol that midfield as well as a classic number 6, but he could also go forward. I mean, he is perfect for that role, in my opinion, under Ange Postecoglou. And under Conte, you can't put the shackles on Bissouma because you just don't let him flourish, and you don't see the kind of attributes that he's got, the strong attributes that he's got. So I think, as you've seen already in pre-season and the Brentford game, he is one of the players that have really come on leaps and bounds since last season, and that tells you everything why.
Yeah, exactly. As you can see as well from those heat maps, he's just so much more involved. I think under Conte, I felt like his what he was asked to do on the ball was very much take the ball, release it quickly, not get too involved in the attacks, give a platform for the attackers to get on the ball quickly in quick transitions. But under Conte, he's so much more heavily involved. He's at the hub of that midfield and he's touching the ball over the place. And you can see here James Maddison as well as another central midfielder, as one of the 8s, picking up the ball so much higher. Look how much he's picking up the ball in the defensive area. Virtually never, essentially. He's picking up those pockets of space just outside the penalty area, and that's where we're seeing the centre mids pick up the ball. If you look at Ollie Skip as well, he was less involved than the other centre mids. As you can see, the concentration only little, pretty much as a wide central midfielder. But again, look how much he's picking up the ball in the defensive third. Virtually never. He's very much having possession in the attacking third, a bit wider than maybe the other centre mids. But I think it's just goes to show the difference between how the centre mids are going to be deployed compared to Conte and Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see these kind of heat maps on these players, especially Ollie Skip, if when we're playing against a team who also likes to dominate possession, because Brentford sat in their low block, didn't they? And we kind of dominated possession within their half. Maybe, do you reckon maybe you'll see the team drop deeper against a Manchester United this weekend, or maybe when we come up against Arsenal in a couple of weeks?
I don't think we're ever going to revert into a low block or anything like that. I do think the aim of the game, even against better sides, will be to try to assert ourselves and dominate the ball. But I do envisage against teams who also their goal is to dominate and dominate the ball and hold possession. I'm sure we're going to see less possession. I'm sure there will have to be times where we're going to be a bit deeper and a bit more defensively pragmatic. So it would be interesting to see what happens when we do come up against those teams. But in a weird way, the way we set up is quite unique compared to like a Man United. I wouldn't necessarily say like an Arsenal or City, but definitely a Man United who still like to play their fullbacks as orthodox fullbacks out wide. And I actually think the way we set up is going to allow us to dominate possession even more. The question will be when we turn over possession against very good teams like Man United, how we cope with that, how we cope in those transitions. But I actually envisage, for example, on Saturday when we play Man United, I would predict we're still going to dominate the ball.
I would think so, but like you're saying, in the transition, I fear for us when you're looking at players with real quality, Anthony, Rashford, Bruno, who can spray a ball, in the wide areas, really springing the counter-attack on us.
No, 100%, and that's the give and take, high risk, high reward. That's the football. No football system is completely perfect.
Yeah.
And you can't account for everything. You're going to have to give up some areas where you dominate. But I reckon these inverted fullbacks are going to really help us dominate possession against teams, even against teams as good as Man United, I reckon.
Yeah, but you even saw, even in pre-season, I know pre-season you can't really judge properly, but we saw sometimes just one ball over the top can really and kill us.
But that's the game. You know what I mean? Yes, that can happen and it will happen, but it's actually happening on purpose in a weird way, because they're going to have to get that ball perfect every time if they're going to be able to get in on goal, and they're going to have to keep it away from a very fast defender like Van de Ven when they do have possession. And yes, we will get caught out, it will happen, but what we'll gain from having that risk is going to outweigh it.
Well, if we're gonna kind of outweigh the risks of that kind of football, we need to get our attackers firing.
Damn right, 100%, and we're going to need better players in possession, 100%, and that's only going to come with time.
Yeah.
The last tactical change will be the sweeper keeper as well. We saw from Vicario, everyone noted how many times he was able to exit his penalty area. There's no graphic for this, but if we look,
it's
at
like the old Hugo Lloris.
Well, if you're talking about Hugo Lloris from last season,
maybe not from last season.
If I look at the stat, defensive actions outside the penalty area for goalkeepers, only this season Vicario did 7 in his first game in a Tottenham shirt, and in Ange's first game
out
in
the
charge,
box.
7 defensive actions from outside the box last season. In the whole of last season, in every game, Lloris only committed more actions outside the box in one game the whole season. He committed 9, and that was against Frankfurt in the Champions League. So that really goes to show the difference in what the goalkeeper's asked to do compared to Lloris last season under Conte, where he virtually never left his penalty area. Only in like a handful of games did he even have more than 2 defensive actions from outside the box. And in Vicario's first game, he committed 7. Now I think that's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, but you're talking about a very much a declined Hugo Lloris. I would like to see what it was like in maybe his first couple of seasons, because you did see him rushing out a lot in those kind of seasons. And what it did remind me of Vicario a little bit, he's a bit unorthodox in the way he kicks the ball, in the way his languid style. It did remind me a tiny bit of Aurelio Gomez.
Aurelio Gomez.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, we can compare Lloris from his time under Pochettino, but the main comparison would have been the tactical switches.
Yeah, I get that.
And Conte. But if I look at his the first season, we have it under Pochettino. This is in 17-18, peak Hugo Lloris. The highest defensive actions outside the box in that season, and we finished 3rd that season, we were quite good, was 6. That was the highest throughout the whole season. So every other match apart from that was lower, and Vicario did 7 against Brentford, so that was higher than any other game in maybe a peak Lloris season. That goes to show the difference.
Well, I hope Vicario can really prove me wrong, because I haven't been that impressed with him so far, to be honest. But I haven't been impressed with a couple of keepers when they start with, and they always kind of fight their way into my mind. So hopefully Vicario can do the same.
Yeah, but it's less about the quality of the keeper; it's more about the role they're given. Is the point?
Yeah, he is very proactive. I'll give him that. So I think we did have a few heart and mouth moments with him on the weekend,
and I think we'll have more.
Well, I think we're going to have many more with him, and we are going to give away goals doing it as well.
Not just him. I think any keeper who would play in this system under Ange and asked to do as much sweeping as Vicario was asked. Well, there will be moments where it's going to look dodgy and you're going to have your heart in mouth. But I think, again, the balance of how many times he's going to be able to stop transitions and attacks by coming out early will outweigh. But a bit like Lloris early on in his Spurs career. He used to come out sweeping, and every time it happened, Spurs fans get worried. Yet he used to stop so many attacks. And yes, now and then he would give away a goal, but the amount of attacks stopped compared to the goals given away is worth the risk.
Yeah, I would say though, like if you compare it to someone like Ederson at Man City, yeah, Ederson does it a lot. He comes out of his goal, he stops loads of attacks, and sometimes Man City fans do have their heart in their mouths when Ederson is coming out really far. But what Ederson does have is that supreme ball playing ability where he can really like play himself out of trouble massively. I'm not sure if we've seen that from Vicario just yet.
Yeah, I mean, we were told, we're signing a keeper who's got good ball playing ability, and as of now, he seemed quite nervous at the moment with the ball at his feet, and his passing hasn't been that great. Hopefully, that will improve in time. But yeah, he's definitely good. That's definitely something to keep an eye on.
All right, so there you have it. Those are the 5 tactical changes that we have noticed under Ange Postecoglou so far in the first game against Brentford. Let me know which other tactical changes you would like us to analyse, and we'll do that for you. But thank you everyone for watching today. Like, subscribe and comment, and as always, come on you Spurs.